Hi, this is Daniel Pyne, and you should be watching the Crew Reviews.
Let's welcome Daniel Pyne to the show. How are you, good sir?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on.
Last to you.
Well.
What drinks are you having so I can feel jealous?
Yeah, this is a little Four Roses bourbon.
Oh, nice.
I got some Rabbit Hole.
Today I'll be drinking water and I'll have a water memory.
Gotta screw up the whole show now.
Yeah.
I know.
Oh, man. Dan, author, screenwriter, producer, director. I'm sure there's about 20 other hats that you've worn at some point in time. But what can you tell us about your latest book, Water Memory? Can you give us a little overview of what you have coming out here?
It's a thriller about an aging, but not really that old, private military contractor who discovers that she's suffering from serial concussion syndrome. She's having memory issues.
Right.
And she decides to take a time out and books a cruise on a cargo ship, a cargo container ship, which they'll generally take, 4 to 6 passengers along with all their cargo. And it's a very quiet environment. And she thinks she's just going to have some time to sort of relax and regroup and try to think about what her future might be. And also, she is a little estranged from her 2 grown children who are in their 20s. And she thinks that this is just a good chance for her to check all that out. And unfortunately, partway into the trip, pirates try to take over the ship. And her natural reflex is to fend them off.
Yeah.
And she it's muscle memory. She goes into battle mode. And it's certainly the thing that they didn't expect. So it complicates things. But she quickly discovers that not only are the pirates not who they appear to be, but some of the passengers aren't who they appear to be. So it becomes more and more complicated. And by the end, her adult children, who don't really understand what she's done for a living because she's kept it from them growing up, try to rescue her. And that creates even more problems.
Wow.
So the spec op officer is going to get rescued by her kids.
Yeah.
Interesting. I know how that's going to turn out. Well, we do. We do.
Well, so I spent a chunk of my career working with kids who had experienced concussions, some of them in multiple events. And this is central to the theme of your book. What drew you to this kind of medical issue, and where did you go for research on the topic for your protagonist, Aubrey Central?
I worked on the original draft of what became Any Given Sunday. And in my first draft, it was based on the autobiography by the team doctor of the Oakland Raiders.
Yeah.
And he had this really complicated relationship with the orthopedic surgeon for the team.
What?
Who
Imagine that.
Eventually accused of having players playing hurt and, ignoring their injury issues. It was right at the beginning of the steroids.
Yeah.
And among the many things that this doctor had dealt with were concussion syndromes. And he was on the forefront of that. And, wanting more of a protocol, wanting to pull people off the field when they had concussions.
Yeah.
So I kind of got interested in that. And then at the same time, working on a number of thrillers and just working on movie projects about military or paramilitary people being exposed to explosions.
Yeah.
I started looking into that because I thought, well, it's got to be the same thing, and it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of the genesis of my character's Achilles heel.
Yeah.
Was looking at, if you were one of these people who did a lot of private ops, you would be exposed to blast waves that, wouldn't be considered injuries, and you might just suffer from them later. And I've since talked to some private contractors and some special forces guys who say that they do have that. A lot of them do suffer from that.
Yeah, it's cumulative.
It's weird because it's not like dementia. It tends to be a progressive disease, but nobody really understands it. There are some people who are affected by it and some people who are less affected by it.
Right.
Well, I don't want to give any spoilers away here, but the narrative style in Water Memory does a very effective job putting the reader in Aubrey's place, and in a way that's unique of the books I've read. It shifts things in a way that makes you wonder if the passage is occurring, if it's a memory, if it's an illusory event altogether.
Oh, good.
It does. It does very effectively.
Yeah.
But what I'm curious about is, as a writer, how do you navigate that when constructing a story, the asides, the flashbacks and such, while still driving the main plot forward?
You kind of fly by the seat of your pants. I mean, I wrote this one in present tense, which is, what we write screenplays in all the time. So that helped. But I'm always, because I got used to writing in present tense, I'm fascinated by past tense and also what you're talking about, the shift between past and present tense. And I get it screwed up all the time. And I have really good editors who help me. But I feel like it's something that over the course of the books that I've written, I keep working on more and more because, as you know, from screenwriting, screenwriting is really linear. You can't do that so much in a screenplay. Mm-hmm. And flashbacks in a screenplay tend to be kind of cumbersome and they tend to be a crutch. So I get really interested in that back and forth and that kind of flow between past and present. And I grew up on people like Faulkner who do it so effortlessly that I get completely confused by his books.
Well, I think it was very effective from this character's point of view, because it really, it made you feel like you were dealing with the same thing the character was dealing with as you went. And I just a very effective use of it. So
thanks. Yeah, that was the idea, was that I really wanted to, in the same way that in a screenplay, you make the drama really visual and present. I wanted to make her internal mechanism, I wanted to bring them up so that you sort of understood how her thoughts were shifting. But I'm also really interested in how memory works in general and how flawed it is.
It was funny. Sean actually had started reading it before I did, and we messaged back and forth when we're reading books, and he mentioned that fact that it's in the title, and he's like, I think Dan was actually trying to get the reader in that mindset as well. I'm like, and I told Sean, I'm like, that's really interesting and really hard to do. So kudos for and what was cool, because when I was reading it, I was able to, having that little bit of information, it made it that much more enjoyable when I was actually reading.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I love hearing that. That was the intention.
Cool.
You mentioned, because you're a screenwriter, but Water Memory, it's unique for a whole bunch of reasons, but it was your use of the present tense, and you just talked about it, that brought mind another screenwriter turned author that we recently interviewed. His name's Chris Howdy. Can you talk a little bit more about what draws you when you're writing thrillers to the present tense? Is there anything other than that's just comfortable to you?
Boy, that's a good question. There's something about it that is really, is really propulsive. There's a motor to it. I'm writing a second Centro book, and I'm not doing it in present tense, and it works just as well. It's fine, but there's something dynamic about jumping into a story and being with the character as they're moving. And that's kind of, I think, I'm not sure why screenplays are written that way, why they're written in the present tense, but they are. And maybe it's because you're describing things that are happening on the screen as you're watching them. So it tends to pull you in. But I really liked it for this story.
Did you find, you said you're using past tense for the sequel of this, I'm assuming. Do you find yourself wanting to switch like in the middle of it?
Sometimes.
Yeah. You're like, this would just sound so much better this way. My editor would say that I have a really hard time staying in past tense.
Shot caller always whelps.
Yeah.
Chris mentioned Chris Howdy. The four of us all know another very well-known screenwriter / author, and we've had a few on the show here. And they've all had personal takes on the differences between writing script for television and movies versus the realm of writing novels. And so what's your experience been, and possibly maybe the biggest differences that you've noticed between the Hollywood side of the house and the novel writing side of the house?
In terms of the business, or in terms of the...
I think more of this, the writing itself, as you've experienced both sides. What did you personally take away from that?
I set out to be a prose writer. I set out to be a novelist, and I just honestly wasn't very good at it. I got all balled up in my own psychology and my own language, and I had a really hard time finding a voice that sounded right for me. I think I like them both for different reasons. What's great about a screenplay is you're telling a story visually with pictures.
Yeah.
Largely, I have this technique that I sometimes teach to students where I tell them to just turn off the sound and see if their script is working as a series of, does the scene work visually? Or is it just two people talking? And if it's really working, it's not just two people talking. And one example would be that famous scene in Heat, where you have
the diner.
At the diner, yeah.
At the diner,
right? Of course,
the window. And if you turn the sound off in that, you get what's going on, and you get the dynamics between these two characters just from how they look at each other and their relationship on the screen. So the visual part of screenwriting is something that I really like. And I love movies. So I've always liked that. What's been hardest for me in prose writing was digging into characters' psychology and letting you into what they're thinking, because you can't do that in a screenplay. The way you do it in a screenplay is you show it by gesture or by the way they react to things.
Yeah.
And I had a really hard time. I still have a really hard time sometimes opening those doors and knowing how far you can go into it, because if you do too much of it, it's just boring.
Sure.
But the best thing for me was when I started writing screenplays, I got accused a lot of I should be a novelist because I love to write the description. I love to write the action. And but what I discovered early on was nobody really cared about that in a screenplay. So you kind of can do whatever you want.
Okay.
And I was able to try out and develop voices in my narrative that really didn't matter that much at the end of the day, because nobody ever sees them. I'm writing for 50 people at most, 100 people. But it kind of loosened me up so that when I came back to prose writing, I was much freer. I was much less afraid of just writing what I felt like writing.
Yeah. Okay.
That's funny. I was going to say, if, did you find it liberating writing this compared to
screenplays? It's just different. I mean, I love how you can wander a little bit more with a book, and you don't have to hit the act structures as hard. You don't have to build to the same kind of a climax, but it's very different. They're really, I love them both.
Well, let's stick with the same subject. All writers, when we have to make a conscious choice to devote ourselves to a project, because we know it's going to take a certain amount of time, a certain amount of effort, a certain amount of thought. So knowing how much it takes to finish a novel or a screenplay, when you were inspired to write a story, what factors determine which medium to select to tell that story?
Yeah, I don't know.
Honesty.
Stories are story. I feel like they could be anything. They could be a TV show. They could be a movie. No. Yeah. Yes. One of my difficulties with television is it took me years. I fought with it for years, and it's taken me years to barely understand it, which is television is all act two. It's all middle, because it's designed to go on forever, or as long as you can sustain it.
Yeah, it has to.
Movies tend to be very focused. Movies tend to be the journey of a character who evolves or is subjected to certain pressures and doesn't evolve and is revealed to not evolve. But they tend to have a shape to them like that. And television tends to be more about a family that is assaulted from the outside by something, and either integrates that or manages it in some way and is left changed at the end. Television is a much more tends to be a multi-character beast.
Right.
And I feel like I still don't understand television.
After how many years?
By the way, if nobody knows his background, the fact that you say that, it's
kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I know, it's weird, but maybe it's good because it means I keep trying hard.
Right. Well,
yeah, sure. Well, screenwriting follows kind of a very strict formula. I mean, to a certain extent, the way it's been explained to me, and Sean's talked about that a number of times.
Well, maybe the screenwriters you've talked to, maybe not me.
Well, okay. So let's say you're a little loosey-goosey with the screenplay compared to some folks, but do you
and then you don't sell it.
Yeah, well, but it was fun. But do you follow a formula with your novel writing? Are you a heavy outliner? Do you have, blank, 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 or do you kind of just let the horses free and see where the story takes you?
I kind of need an outline, but I approach an outline. I've begun to think I approach an outline the way that other people approach when they don't have an outline, where they just let it go. So I'll tend to, when I'm outlining, I'm not thinking in terms of any formula or format. I'm just letting the story go. I'm just trying to do it as an overview so that I can get a sense of the whole thing.
Well, let's continue going about the film stuff. When you recently worked on Amazon's Bosch,
right?
You wrote 10 episodes, but you're also an executive producer for 40 episodes. How much different was it, or how different was it adapting? You think about all of the work that you've done, adapting a novel for the series as opposed to like the feature film, the novelization of it.
It's really different. I mean, it was different in a lot of ways. It was different because we tended to put more than one of Michael Connelly's novels together. So we would weave two plots together. It was different from my other television experience because it's streaming. So you're doing all of it at once and it drops all at once. So it has more of the shape of a movie or a really long movie or a book. Generally, when I'm adapting a novel for a screenplay, it's about what do you leave out? You know, there's so much more in the novel than you can usually fit in a screenplay. So you tend to try to figure out how to leave stuff out. And it's also, a lot of times novels will be told out of order. So it's how do you tell the story as effectively, but put it back into chronological order or into some kind of screen order.
Was there one that you preferred over the other? Doing the Bosch, say the other thriller that I saw you did Some of All Fears, Tom Clancy?
Yeah. I don't know. They're really different. I'm not a big Tom Clancy fan, so that was kind of funny.
I'll hide all these books back behind me.
Oh, he didn't speak to me.
What happened there?
But apparently I was working with, I went on it and I was working on it, and then Phil Robinson came on it. Alden Robinson, the director, came on, and he's also a writer. So, and we had to do it really quickly. So I tended to be writing the first draft while he was going through and marking up that. I would be writing the second one, and we were almost on top of each other. But apparently when we finished, he didn't tell me this, but Tom Clancy wrote him about a 7-page letter about how much he hated what we'd done. He hated it.
Really?
And was angry about it and and dismissive and profane and all these things. So Phil, who was just the best politician ever, film politician ever, kind of calmed him down, shot the movie, took it to Washington, D.C. and screened it for a bunch of people in Washington because they had helped as consultants. And Clancy and his wife came to the screening. Oof. And afterwards, she told Clancy that it was the best version of one of his books. So he kind of calmed down. But I never got to speak to him. I don't think that ever would have worked.
Even after that, happy wife, happy life, he still didn't go, you know what, you did a good job with it.
Well, they did get divorced, so, you know.
Yeah, it's fine.
Well, I want to go to another book of yours. You wrote something called Catalina Eddy. It was kind of like a 3-part novella, kind of in a classic California noir style. Even Michael Connelly blurbed that at the time it was your masterpiece. I think that's what he had said. What is it about this genre that captivates so many people, inspires so many authors on the West Coast to just kind of explore that dark side of California, Southern California area?
It's the tradition of Hammett and Chandler and Ross MacDonald. There's something in the bright sunshine, seedy underbelly that lends itself to those kinds of stories. There's this kind of bucolic surface, and yet underneath it are the same dark themes that are everywhere else. There's a lot of crazy people here. It's not quite as crazy as South Florida, but crazy in a different way. And there's a lot of power here, power and money and
power, money, sex, and violence.
Yeah.
Permissive throughout.
It's really rich. Los Angeles history is really rich with contradictions too. Elroy has milked it, and Michael Connelly does, and there's so many different cross currents of American endeavor that come into play here. And in Catalina Eddie, I dealt a little bit with Jet Propulsion Laboratories and the stuff that was going on in Pasadena and San Diego and the border stuff. I don't know.
But here, I got a question for you, Dan. It's because it's so gritty. Why do you think? And it's dark. It's violent. It's dark. It just is. It's like the underbelly of society. Why do you think readers are so gravitated towards that? Because it's real. You know, it's fiction, but it's what do you think that grabs a reader and just makes them want to read that stuff?
I don't know.
Are we all messed up? Is like humanity just all messed up, and then we could see ourselves in some of those stories and go, "Yeah, I could see that. I can go down that path." Or is it like, I'm glad I'm not that guy.
It's a lot of it is also it's the dream factory. It's a place where people came to escape and to recreate themselves and recreate their lives, and that dream being undercut by something is something that we can all relate to.
Yeah.
A lot of the stories are also they're about normal, regular people facing extraordinary things rather than Jack Ryan or, a special.
Yeah.
Some kind of superhero,
right.
That always wins,
Yeah. It's not surprising that the superhero genre tends to exist in Gotham City or, these big metropolitan areas.
Right.
Well, getting back to water memory for a minute, Joseph Conrad's novel Lord Jim comes into play, and there are several themes in the story that play out in your novel. The choices that define us, the nature of memory, particularly how differently it can be interpreted by different people who were at the same event. At what point in creating this story did you know the classic novel was going to play a part?
I didn't know it was going to play a part. I did reread it. I read a bunch of sea adventures because I was writing a sea adventure.
Yeah.
I read Ship of Fools by Catherine Ann Porter, and I read Lord Jim. It didn't show up until Aubrey Central goes into her son's bedroom to find a book to read on her trip because she's forgotten one. And then I thought, oh, this is kind of interesting. And there's a little bit of, there's not really a parallel between her journey and Jim's in the novel, but there's a little bit of that idea of going on a trip and discovering yourself, and also of bravery and cowardice and what defines heroism, what defines morality.
Yeah.
Right.
Did she ever finish it? I don't think she ever finished the story.
She doesn't.
No.
I don't think she finishes the novel. She's reading it at the end, though.
Yeah. Right.
Uh-huh.
Well, all right. So there's a line that stuck with me in Water Memory. It's quote, even when she can't remember her children's name, the face of the dead will linger. And it just stuck with me. And why do you think that's true for her, for that character? Even though she has, strained relationship with her children, she still loves them. Right. Right. And the people she's killed are they likely had it coming. So why is it that when everything is going hazy, the last thing that she will remember and see are those faces?
I think she's afraid of that, but I wanted her to have felt the impact of this life she'd led, because too often, and I'm guilty of this too, too often we portray these people as killing machines. They just go out and
no remorse. Right.
No remorse. And I felt like the more realistic version of her was someone who, she's not a killing machine, and the people that she's killed they stay with her, they impact her. And it was also kind of a philosophical thing of when you take someone's soul,
yeah,
you've taken it, and you've taken it on in a way, in the same way that they say when you save someone, you're sort of now responsible for them. So I felt like it was more how she's feeling about it. She's worried that the last thing she's going to be able to remember is the violence she's done and not the love that she's provided.
That's a tough thing to confront.
Oof,
Even as a fictional character, it's a tough thing to confront as a human being.
And that's
like
kind of
what's your worth? Is it your love? Is it your violence?
Kind of it's her. That's her burden that she carries. Is that she made these choices to be the breadwinner, to do this job, to lie to her children because she wanted to protect them.
Yeah.
And she was away from them.
Yeah.
All those decisions affect us. I mean, we all do it. Maybe not in that dramatic a way, but
yeah. I haven't killed nearly as many people as she has. I want to flip the question around a little bit. You born in Chicago, lived in Colorado, and then you run off to Stanford, which, let's just say it's a little more rigorous to get into than a lot of other colleges. So did you have a different career aspiration as a young man going there versus, say, going to like UCLA for film school or something?
Yeah. Well,
wanted to be a lawyer.
No, my father was a painter and a sculptor who worked as a commercial artist to support us.
Yeah.
And he wanted me to have a practical education. He wanted my education. He didn't want me to go in the arts, really. So
sorry, Pop.
Yeah. No, I had a high school friend who was a couple of years older who went to Stanford and would write me these letters about how much fun he was having. And going from Colorado to Palo Alto
it's a big jump.
Was a big jump.
Yeah.
And going into that environment from, Littleton High School, not many of my classmates made that jump.
Yeah.
But I kind of wanted to do it, and it was either going to be I would be a lawyer and try to write, or maybe in the back of my mind I thought maybe this would be a way to get a foot into publishing, because I didn't know anything about how you do that, how you even go about it.
Yeah.
And Stanford has arguably one of the best creative writing programs in the country. And I was able to take some courses from some novelists and some writers in the Stegner program.
That's awesome.
Well, I don't think the average person knows that. Associate Stanford with a great creative writing thing, but we've had at least 3 authors on here that are Stanford grads so far. So
yeah, no, it's an amazing. Scott Turow was
right.
There. He was a teaching fellow when I was there, and my mentor Chuck Kinder was a teaching fellow. They were young writers. Wow. It's kind of an amazing program. It falls on it just. Stanford doesn't emphasize the arts very much, so you fly under the radar mostly.
Right. You think Silicon Valley or something, but
yeah, engineers, business,
lawyers. Yeah. But we had a good lawyer come out of there, Robert Dugoni, right? He was Stanford.
Yeah, Robert Dugoni was Stanford.
Meg Gardner.
Stanford.
Meg Gardner. Yeah. Was crazy.
Yikes.
Well, Daniel, you have worked on some iconic television series. We talked about Bosch, but Miami Vice. I grew up on The Equalizer. Maybe Mike will remember Matt Houston and some others.
Man, I'm not that old. Yes, I am.
That you worked on. But then you've also you've adapted several books. You've adapted Some of All Fears. You adapted oh my goodness, John Frankenheimer.
Manchurian
Candidate. Yeah, that's awesome.
But you have you also have a ton of original stuff. And Doc Hollywood's one of my favorite movies from that era.
Oh, great. Yeah, me too.
Oh, I love it. Do you have a baby? Like, is there a favorite among all those things you've done?
You do.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. The movie that I co-wrote with John Mankiewicz and directed, Where's Marlowe?
Where's Marlowe?
Yeah.
Probably 15 people saw, maybe. was was the most fun of anything I've done, and the most rewarding, because I basically got to make an art movie under the radar in Hollywood, and just never happens.
Do you think you could do you think that could be snuck in these days, or was that something that was kind of like?
It was a moment, it was a weird moment in time that we were able, if you ever get an opportunity to see it, it's the weirdest thing you'll ever see. But it is a detective. It is a detective.
Sold.
It's
weird, we're
Barlow,
there.
right? Come on.
Yeah, Miguel Ferrer is in it. A lot of character actors you'd recognize, but it was the purest and most it was the most creative thing that I feel like I've done, that was more me than anything, because it combined all the things I was interested in. It's documentaries, it's filmic, it's very cinematic, it's funny, it's detective stories. It's got a lot of echoes of the Long Goodbye. That was probably one of my favorites. But I've had really good experiences in Hollywood, if you take away all the bad ones. Working with Jonathan Demme was great. Working with John Schlesinger.
Wow.
Working on Doc Hollywood with Michael Fox and Michael Caton Jones.
Nice.
I've really been lucky. I feel like I've been really lucky.
I don't think you can have a Hollywood career without maybe a couple that didn't quite go the route you thought would happen, right? I mean, is that even possible?
Yeah.
No.
I tell this. My daughter is a writer, and she sees me now, and I keep trying to tell her, I've probably written 10 times as many things as I've written.
Yep.
That never got made.
Yeah.
Made.
Well,
Time for me to hit the whiskey now.
Yeah. Now you've reminded me of these things. You have survived the main portion
Yes, sir, you have.
of our interview, but you've now entered the realm of the lightning round.
Uh-oh.
And so you're going to get 3 questions from each of us. We put very little thought into the questions. We require very little thought into your answer. And so with further ado,
stream of conscious, Dan. Stream of conscious.
All right. So I'm the host today. I'm going to start first. Name something that you can easily find in Chicago that is nowhere to be found in Colorado.
There's that Picasso, that huge Picasso next to the building.
That was what? How many millions of dollars was that thing? It was such a. Oh my God! Pizza.
The Dragon.
Say pizza.
Oh
no!
Chicago pizza. You're right. Deep dish pizza. Okay, never mind.
Nah,
Colorado's got none of this good stuff.
There are no wrong answers in this, but
Yeah.
actually, there are only wrong answers.
Picasso in Colorado. Though.
Yeah,
Picasso in Colorado. Okay.
No, it was a big deal when it went up.
Yeah.
All right. You're born in Chicago and you grew up in Colorado. Is there anything about LA that still doesn't make any sense to you whatsoever?
All of it.
Here.
Kind of all encompassing.
Yeah.
It'd be like earthquakes. I don't know.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
The whole damn hit and caboodle.
All right.
I've been here. How long have I been? I've been here 30
most of
years.
your life.
Yeah, and it still doesn't make sense to me.
Would you ever leave? Would you ever be like, you know what? I'm going to, I don't know, Florida.
I think about it all the time. I mean, I go to Santa Fe.
Yeah, nice.
Which is nice. I don't know. My wife is a native Californian, and she would never leave.
You can't go.
So, and I wouldn't leave her.
Mine is too, and she kind of keeps talking about California. I'm like, what? All right.
Really?
Yeah, because they say you can. Everything is here. Everything you'd want: mountains, beach,
tons of taxes, traffic. You bet.
Traffic. Yeah.
Homeless? I don't know.
All right. My last question is, how many pastel color jackets do you own when working on Miami Vice, and where do you store them?
Yes. Do you still have them? You must.
I had I didn't have any. I had a tan jacket.
No.
But I had a really light tan jacket.
With shoulder pads, right? Come on.
Well,
Members
and
only?
then we had the crew jacket, which I no longer have, but it was black silk with pink and aqua highlights.
Of course it was.
Beautiful. That's gorgeous.
Was
it
puffy.
buttons?
And it was puffy.
Was it buttons or a zipper?
It was a zipper, but it was silk.
Silk.
Dang. He probably puts that on once a year as kind of like got to get back.
You can sell that on eBay. You probably make some.
You could probably, if you found one on eBay, it's probably worth a fortune. Mine, I don't think I have mine anymore. I think it faded.
All right, disappointed on that one.
I, on the other hand, had 2 pastel jackets from the Miami Vice era.
Yeah, he still wears
I don't
them.
have them anymore. But
Yes, you do. You
wear
still
them on the
never
weekends.
had one.
Okay, I'm up next. And mine aren't really all that absurd. Well, not
Please,
that
come
much.
on.
So we talked about Bosch. We've talked about some of the other series you worked on. What novel or novel series, aside from your own, would you most want to bring to life on television?
Oh, that's a good one. Olin Steinhauer. Do you know who he is? He's this great espionage writer.
Okay.
And he wrote a quintet of novels set in a fictional Eastern Bloc satellite country, and they start right after World War II and they go into the 70s or 80s.
Cool.
Cold
I
War.
would be
And it's about a homicide division in this weird little town in a Soviet bloc country that, of course, has no homicides because there were no homicides in Soviet. And it's just great. And I've wanted to. I think it would be just the most brilliant series.
With all the different streaming avenues and so many like kind of unconventional stories like that, I can easily see that.
It's like an Amazon or something like that.
Yeah, I think he wants to do it himself. He's the creator of Berlin Station.
Oh,
I think.
okay.
Wow.
And he had a big novel called The Tourist
Oh yeah.
a few years ago, but he's a great writer. You should read him. He's a great writer.
I just wrote it down.
Okay, you are a writer, director, producer, which Robin Williams famously said was the only creature on earth that could blow smoke up its own ass.
Oh, true.
Brilliant.
What is your favorite thing about each of those roles?
I don't like anything about producing, except that you have the power to say no to other producers. But it's not my favorite thing. What I love about directing is it's the equivalent of being a novelist, except with film. And it's so much easier because you have 100 highly skilled people who do exactly what you want and better than you could possibly do it. And you just have to answer questions. So it's a lot easier than writing. And I love writing. I love creating stories. I love creating characters. I like writing dialogue. So the writing part is the best part still.
There we go.
Here. All right. And my last question, you mentioned Santa Fe. So what is the best restaurant or your favorite restaurant in the city different?
Geronimo.
Okay. We're going to cross-reference this with David Morell's list.
David Morell, yeah, because he's in Santa Fe.
We're going to put out a Santa Fe dining guide.
I think he actually mentioned that one.
He probably did, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to close this out. My 3 questions are dumb because, I write dumb questions. So what movie can you watch over and over without getting tired of seeing?
Oh, North by Northwest.
Classics.
Okay.
Just watch that with my kids.
Do I need more than one?
No, if you got one more, give it to me.
Apocalypse Now.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Oh, that's true. So true.
You know what one I just for whatever reason I never answer my own questions, but Braveheart. For some reason, I will watch that over and over. I don't know why, but I just enjoy watching Braveheart.
Oh, Tombstone.
I have a bunch.
Tombstone.
I have a bunch. I mean, when people ask me what your favorite movie is, I can't answer that.
Yeah.
So do you gravitate towards like comedy or is it like what's your go-to?
Probably drama, probably adventure thrillers, adventure.
Yeah.
But
That'd be me.
All right. Here's my next question. In the past, people were buried with items that they would need in the afterlife. What would you want buried with you so you could use it in the afterlife?
a typewriter.
You bring a typewriter. It's multi-use.
And the ink.
Yeah, and a ribbon.
Yeah, we one of those Twilight Zone things where the guy has all the time he wants to read.
Paper.
Yeah, I don't have nothing.
Mine is a cell phone, so I could text you guys from beyond the grave.
You know what I would do?
Who's gonna haunt this anyway?
Who's
I
this?
would not want to be buried with a phone.
That'd be so annoying. Stop calling me, people.
Yeah.
I can only call you.
They're calling you about your car insurance. Yeah.
Let it, calling dude. I get those like 5 times a day. Not only in my cell phone from like my home office. It's ridiculous. All right, here's my last question. When was the last time you got to tell someone, "I told you so"?
I don't know.
It's a toughie.
Yeah, that's boy.
Well, here's your homework. Here's your homework. Do that and then get back to us and tell us what it was about.
You've stumped me. Maybe I'm never right.
You have. You were a producer, executive producer on Bosch. Did you tell anybody on the show, "Hey, I told you so"? That wasn't going to work. Let's do that.
The trouble with Hollywood is you can never prove it. You can tell them I was right about that, and they don't care.
They don't give a crap.
But a lot of people tell you it was their idea.
Yeah, don't steal it.
Well, hey, thanks for coming on the show, Dan. It was great to talk to you about your book.
This is so much fun.
Water Memory. Please go out and buy it, folks. Right there. Great story, folks. You got to get out there and see this. His use of tense was kind of cool. I mean, it was.
I liked it. Refreshing.
So it's refreshing compared to a lot of other books out there. So please pick up a copy. Good to have you on. And
thank you.
Carry on.
Cheers, brother.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Boys.
What?
Daniel Pyne. We talked about Water Memory, its latest thriller. And we also talked about all of his titles in Hollywood, movies and all kinds of stuff. And Chris doesn't know what he's talking about, but he's showing us. And join us every Monday when we bring on another best-selling guest.
We do.
Gentlemen, here's mud in your eye.
Yeah, mud in your eye, buddy.
I have water and I still have my memory.
What are we doing? All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. Yeet.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, he had a. Get that man some more quarters. Are we nominating you for a Boucher and Anthony Award? It's an Anthony Award, right?
At least 3 or 4, if not.
Right.
Okay.
When was your book published? Because the rule is
Does it matter?
Been published.
Nah, it has to be 2020. Well, it's 2019.
Budget?
That's what I thought.
Missed it. Right that. Hey, boys.
Yeah.
Daniel Pyne on the show today. In his latest book, Water Memory, a thriller.
It was.
On a cargo ship. Kind of scary.
Yeah.
Kind of good. We liked it. And we also talked about Hollywood. Guys, kind of a big deal out there.
A little bit.
Done a lot of stuff. Go check them out, folks.
Where do we check them out?
And check them out on the internet. Like where I check out everything else.
Chris is the one that has to leave, you dick.
I know, but I had to fuck him up. Come on. My wife's like, I'm like, no, I have to mess him up. I'm sorry.
But it's so anticlimactic when I can't see a body part when that happens. Like I'm kind of
nipples this time.
expecting it. Yeah.
It's just my mouth.
Been married a long time.